there was demand. People wanted to pay for a good service.
There's a level of hard work, grit, graft, determination, consistency that is required to even just get your first few customers, first few clients, whatever it might be.
I'm the kind of person that I will never ask them to do anything that I wouldn't do myself.
Referrals aren't something that you can track or measure, right?
So I think the biggest challenge for me is just overcoming my own insecurities, I guess.
If you are not growing or continuously looking to grow, you will be left behind.
Always focus on sales, so prioritize that before everything else, because without sales, there's no business. No business, got nothing.
Welcome to the podcast From Cold to Close. My name is Saeed and I'm the founder here at SRC Growth Partner, a growth company that helps professional services firms from around the world increase their revenue and profitability by acquiring new clients. My guest today is Maggie Ptasinska, founder and managing director of Housekeeping Club. Maggie's entrepreneurial journey began early, helping her mother's market business from the age of 8 in Poland before moving to the UK as a teenager. After spending her 20s working in hospitality across Europe, she spotted an opportunity during the COVID recovery and launched her cleaning business in 2021 with just a handful of holiday cottages. What sets Maggie apart is her unique positioning. Housekeeping Club serves the hospitality and commercial cleaning markets, being that meticulous guest experience standard to everything they do. In less than 4 years, she's built a thriving operation and recently made the leap from working in the business to working on the business, growing her office team from just herself to 5 people in under a year. Maggie, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
No worries at all. I think it's always interesting hearing the journeys of entrepreneurs, and especially when they still early stage in their entrepreneurial careers and in the growth cycle. Talk to me about your journey to coming into starting your own business and what got you to this?
You know what? A lot of people talk about how they overcame things and how they struggled. And for me, I think at the time, I didn't feel like I struggled. There wasn't anything that stood out that was like, oh, I'm struggling here. But, you know, when I started the business, I was living with my mom. It was straight after COVID. You know, like the restrictions were lifting. People couldn't go abroad at that point, but they were doing a lot of staycations, and a lot of people just come to Cumbria, to the Lake District. So there was a lot of demand for holiday let cleaning. So naturally, that's what I went initially with the business. And so yeah, at that point, I didn't feel like I was actually doing quite well for myself, you know, because I didn't have any debts. I was still quite young. I've done all these things in my life where I thought I had a lot of like life experience, but I was living in a single bedroom with my mum. Well, not with my mum, but in my mum's house with my partner. So yeah, that's where I started the business. And I think, like, looking back now, the reason I started it was because like I didn't really last in any jobs. I would change jobs quite frequently. As soon as I knew what I needed to do and like I was familiar with the job, I'd get bored. It wasn't challenging for me. So because I couldn't progress fast enough within the jobs, because, you know, obviously there's levels to it. Yeah, I'd just leave. I'd just move on to the next thing. And the same thing would happen. It would repeat. So I've had various jobs in my life, you know, from like cleaning to hospitality to a fitness trainer. There was a lot that I've done. And I think at that time I thought, oh yeah, I'm doing quite well for myself because I've tried all these things. But I wasn't, because deep down, I think I really needed to just have my own business.
I think
I thrived.
what you said there, it's really interesting because it's so common amongst entrepreneurs. It's that inability to be in the same spot or not feel that there's progress being made, and it's quite common as well that entrepreneurs tend to be the worst employees, right? Because we're people that like to get things done a particular way. As soon as we get comfortable, it doesn't feel right. You're always looking for the next thing. And it's that common phrase that they use, the new shiny object syndrome, right? And entrepreneurs get it all the time. It's always ideas, creativity. What can I do? What can I bring to the table? How can I improve my life even more? What can I strive for? And so it's really interesting for you to hear that, because without a doubt, you've worked hard and you did a lot of jobs and you did a lot of careers or started a lot of careers or whatever it might be. Fundamentally, the vehicle of entrepreneurship allows you to fulfill what seemed to be the hole in your life previously. It feels like, and I see that from many of the conversations I've had on this podcast than other business owners. So talk to me about Housekeeping Club. What is it you guys do, and how has it evolved over the years?
So, as the name suggests, we do housekeeping, but it's not just housekeeping. So, when the business originally started, I thought I could just focus and like niche down into just doing housekeeping, just doing holiday let, and then expand it sort of across the nation, doing it like, sort of just focusing on the housekeeping sector. And I soon realized that because of where we are, we're in the Lake District. So, you have a lot of areas where there's just land to basically just cover an area. Yes, like to expand is just very difficult in that one sector, in that one niche, because there just isn't that much business in per square footage or per square area, let's say.
Mm.
So we just then started to take on commercial cleans, small offices. Then we started working with schools, councils, and all the rest of it. We started working with builders as well. So we do a range of things now, but the original name was created. I came up with it because we were supposed to focus on housekeeping, but as reality tells you, it's like life tells you, sometimes you just have to go down the path that you didn't know originally like existed. So we do a lot of commercial cleans. We do like support services as well. So we cater to hospitality, which is hotels, holiday lets, and guest houses. And on the commercial side, it's schools, councils, offices, medical practices. Right, the list goes on. And then we also do like handyman services. We provide consumables. So there's a lots of like add-on things that we do as well. So yeah, that's the business.
Do you know what really makes what's interesting in what you said? I think it was the level of pivoting that was needed to be able to survive those early, right? And obviously you're still in your early years, but at the same time, what you mentioned, I think it's a valuable lesson to many other business owners, entrepreneurs, whatever it might be. The idea that you come into the market with isn't necessarily the idea that will take you to wherever you want to get to. And it's constant levels of iteration and optimizations and expanding new revenue channels and making sure that the business survives and making sure that the business is growing and there's opportunity, especially if it's a small market or if it's a small niche or whatever it might be, expanding that. And how do you gain more business? I think it's honestly interesting because when you come into entrepreneurship, you often have an idea, right? You come in and go, okay, well, this is obviously what needs to be done. And then you come in and you go, okay, the market might not be as big as you thought it was, or respond to this, or you might not have product market fit or whatever it might be. And then you have to go, well, okay, am I going to now stop what I'm doing because I've jumped into it? Or am I going to actually work at this thing and go, okay, well, this isn't the perfect thing, but I can still figure it out and make it something. And I think that's really interesting what you said is like you went from housekeeping to commercial and making sure that there's actual square footage for you guys to do work and actually build a business. So it's interesting to hear. In terms of then starting a business during COVID or at the tail end of COVID, talk to me more about that because that is bold. And obviously a lot of people at that time are pulling back or rethinking things and that. And I imagine that would have been what went through your mind at that time. But what gave you the confidence to launch during such an uncertain time?
You know what? Looking back at it, yes, there was risks to it, but I didn't have anything to lose. I was working like a minimum wage job, just answering the COVID phone lines for a month. I hated it. So I only lasted a month in that job. And then I was like, okay, what do I do with myself? I was living with my mom and I was like, okay, I just need to do something. So I didn't really consider the fact that the world was turning upside down at the time or whatever. There was demand. People wanted to pay for a good service. There was a lot of demand for very good cleaning because the standards were really poor. And that's where I fit in. And, I quickly took more and more properties on, uplifted the standards. Then we went on to taking sites with multiple units on site rather than just like individual cottages. So yeah, it grew from that. And I think I just didn't consider doing anything else at the time. And I was like, I don't want a job. If I can make money doing this, even if it's to match my salary, which is like minimum wage, you can't get any worse than that. So I was like, I'm just going to do it. At least I can choose my own hours and I can do it on the days that I want to do it. And first, I still had a job in the evening. So I would clean till like 3 or 4 o'clock. Then I would go into a restaurant and start working there from 5 or 6. So I was doing that sort of, for a few weeks. Then I decided to leave the job because the cleaning was picking up and I just needed to concentrate on that. So yeah, I mean, you just take it in your stride and you just carry on.
Yeah, completely agree with you there. And I think it's often misunderstood at the level of work that's required to get a business off the ground running, right? And it's there's a level of hard work, grit, graft, determination, consistency that is required to even just get your first few customers, first few clients, whatever it might be. And then from there, it's an uphill battle of constantly looking for new customers, maintaining your existing customers. So talk to me about the way your business has evolved now since you started in terms of internally, in terms of building a team. Talk to me more about that.
So yeah, I mean, I started the business. I'm the sole director. So up until November last year, it was just me running the business. You know, I had accountants supporting the business and solicitors as well, but there wasn't like any other members of staff in the office. So in November, I hired my first office administrator, Steph. Then after Steph in January, Paula, our contracts manager, joined. I think after that, my partner joined full time, and then now we've got Jamie as well. So there's 5 of us. So yeah, it's doing well. It's growing well. The next person that I need in the business is going to be an operations manager because I do the more sort of day to day, the managing of the operations, like high level. The team take care of everything else. So yeah, so the next hire will be an operations manager. And yeah, apart from that, we've got about 25 to 30 cleaners, depending on the season. A lot of our work is seasonal, so we do get a lot of staff so leaving at the end of the summer. But yeah, so that's the team.
And in terms of then building that team, what has been your experience of being that sole trader, that individual, and now working in a team, having to manage operations and running the business? Obviously, it's fairly new to you at the moment in terms of you're still a year into it almost. What are the differences between being that sole director versus having a team that you have to now manage?
Well, I think the key difference is that I've always been very good at communicating. So you're the glue within that structure, right? So you've got obviously like 4 different parts of your structure of your building or whatever it is that you're trying to build. And then you've got to make sure that everyone communicates. I think that's a very, very important thing within a team is communication. Even if you think like it might not be important at the time, it might be a week later. So I always communicate with my team, and that's always been very, very important to me. I'm the kind of person that I will never ask them to do anything that I wouldn't do myself. So I get involved in everything still because I just have to. And it also shows that I'm with them as well, working hard. And I'll do more hours and I'll do the early mornings and the late nights. And they don't necessarily have to be here with me. But I think team leading, it's been a learning curve, trying to find a way to articulate things. I think for me, like communication, but yes, like English is my second language. So trying to find ways to articulate things or the words that you want to say and do it in a way where people don't get offended, they get the message, they do what you ask them to do, and you get a good result. It's been a learning. So I think it's communicating in the right way for me, effectively. That's been a really good learning. And just, I think I'm the sort of person that doesn't really celebrate small things. Like, unless it's a big success, unless I win a contract that's worth 100K, there's no reason for me to celebrate. So I celebrate big wins, but small things, like if you're doing a bad job, I'll tell you. If you're doing a good job, that's what I pay you for. That's the kind of mentality that I've got. And sometimes, you know, you've got to adapt to the team that you've got as well and to how they perceive themselves and how they work for the business and their role and the position within the business. So I think it's just being adaptable and empathetic sometimes as well, which for me is a little bit challenging. I find a little bit challenging. So yeah, I think it's just that there's a lot of things when it comes to being a leader and being a manager. So yeah, it's just combining them together, I think, and just making sure that you don't do too much of one thing and not enough of another thing.
I think you've raised some really interesting points, especially around leadership, because leadership in itself is a skill in itself, right? And then you have some of the best leaders, like they talk about Steve Jobs, right? On an external basis, you look at Steve Jobs and you think, what a leader, visionary, all these things. But when you hear interviews of employees of Steve Jobs, they hated him. Absolutely hated it. They thought he was a horrible human being and
Yeah.
they treat you horribly. But I think there lies the interesting elements of leadership, because there are elements, and you touched on it there, where you said you're the type of person where if you do a bad job, I'll tell you, and if you do a good job, that's what I'm paying you for. And I feel like there's an element of standards there that needs to be maintained. And if you are lax in giving praise and compliments, and there's nothing wrong with giving them, and you should definitely absolutely give them when it's warranted. But if you're handing out compliments and trying to be too empathetic all the time, I think it leads to an element of patronization, an element of, I guess, not pushing your team to the levels that they need to get to the standards that they need to get to. So I think it's really interesting that you mentioned that, because I've had people on this podcast talk about leadership many a times. They've never said it the way you've said it. And I think the harsh reality of being an entrepreneur, running a startup business, right, is things need to get done. Things need to get moving.
Yeah.
There's no time to constantly be patting someone on the back for things that need to be done. And so hard work is the most necessary skill, along with actually doing the job and getting the job done. And why being an employee in a small business or a medium-sized business is very different to being in a large business, because the requirements are different for the employees. And so I think you raised some really interesting points there. So I want to talk to you about the biggest challenges you've probably experienced in your journey. What do you think has so far, and I'm sure it's still early days, so there can be many, but what has been the biggest challenge that you've faced in your entrepreneurial journey?
Biggest challenge. You know what? Like, whenever I hear people talk about the challenge and the success story, and I always feel like it's very exaggerated, because I've never really gone through all of that. Yes, I didn't see the struggle at the beginning and whatever. You can always turn it around to, get your violin out and now I'm the success and whatever. The biggest challenges, I think it's just, I think for me was to understand that I deserve this. That despite like English being my second language, not knowing all the words that I want to say, sometimes I've got to Google words that I don't know if that's the right word or the right expression. Sometimes I have to double check myself. So yeah, I think it's just having the confidence. That's been the biggest challenge, like growing to be this confident person now that I am, and going into rooms and not being afraid to speak and not being afraid to speak to millionaires or whatever. And standing my ground if I know I'm right, rather than letting people walk all over you. So I think that's been the biggest challenge, just like my self-development, I think. But nothing like business-wise. I actually think we're doing very well, and we've grown like by 50%, doubled our revenue again this year. So like business-wise, I think we're doing very well, but I think we could be doing a lot more and a lot better. But that comes down to me, I think, as well. So yeah, I mean, this year it's been my goal to stop playing small and think, you're doing amazing, just carry on like that. No, I want to like 10x what I'm doing. So yes, so I think the biggest challenge for me is just overcoming my own insecurities, I guess.
I love it. And I think there's a lot of lessons in that. And what I always like to say, and I say it to myself, I say it to my clients, I say it to anyone that will listen to me, is, and I'm sure you've seen it in many quotes, but the business is very much a reflection of who you are and where you are in your life, in your personal development journey, right? And your growth journey. And there are points in your business where you will hit a bottleneck. And that bottleneck will often, especially in small business, be the owner or the person running that business. And primarily because the owner is essentially the business. And if they do not break past a certain point in growth, then they cannot get into the next stage. Yeah. And what you said there, whereas like I had to get over speaking to millionaires, standing my ground, making sure that English being my second language isn't going to hold me back. And all those things, naturally, the growth required to get to a point where your business now has been able to double its growth year on year, that doesn't happen without that growth. And that is very much a continuation of why personal development is, and entrepreneurship, business ownership is a great vehicle for personal development, and personal development in turn is a vehicle for entrepreneurship. So I think you've raised some really, really great points there. In this stage of the podcast, we like to call the Entrepreneur's Room. And that's a series of questions we like to ask all of our guests to give our viewers and listeners an opportunity to understand how business owners and business leaders think and operate when running their business. So at this stage of the podcast, I always like to ask the same question, which is, how are you currently spending your days as a leader of the business?
I wake up at 4. I go to the gym. I get into the office about 6:20. I start working at 7, and then I finish about 5, 6. Well, I finished at 7 o'clock yesterday, so about 12 hours I do. But that's been a more recent thing. Yeah. And then I divide my day into like hourly sort of blocks. So I would have 7 to 10 because I'm the most awake at that time and my brain works the best at that time. I do like deep concentration work. And 10 to sort of 5, depending on the day. Obviously, if I've got meeting in between and they'll just get in the way and I have to just do what I need to do for those meetings. I generally focus now on like sales, marketing, improving our processes, sometime on LinkedIn as well. And then from about 5, 6 o'clock, then I focus on like low concentration work. So I would maybe check the rota, something that doesn't require a lot of brain power that I can do when I'm tired. So yeah, but I've been doing it for about 2 weeks now. So yeah, I've always been very, very sort of disciplined, but having that structure, so you're not like skipping between tasks and you like trying to do 10 things at once. I think it definitely improves your concentration and your productivity.
I think it's spot on. Even in my own journey, I like to block out periods of time in the day where it's deep work, where you know you're going to be functioning at your best. You're going to be working on the business rather than in the business. So that's what you said, sales, marketing, operations, SOPs, whatever it might be that you're working on. And then by the end of the day, let's be honest, we all tail off. Like you'd be an animal if you weren't able to if you were continuing at the same pace. Another cup of coffee might get you through it, but 100%, it makes a lot of sense to operate at the low energy kind of jobs that you can do with your eyes closed. So it's really interesting to hear. Okay, in terms of then, obviously, you've been running your business now, and there might be different things that you look at over the years that have been your priority. But what are the most important metrics for you when running the business?
I think standards, so our audits is definitely a key one. Attendance and staff retention. And I think the responsiveness as well. So how fast we respond to queries and customer complaints or whatever it might be. Yeah, so that's like the 4 sort of benchmarks that I always look at.
I love it. And it sounds like they're all surrounding customer experience and employee retention as well, which is really important, obviously, because that in itself brings word of mouth, referrals, growth in that sense. And that brings me on to my next question. What are you currently doing in the business that is helping grow the business? What are you currently doing to grow the business?
So I have been very, just recently, in the last couple of weeks again, I mean, on LinkedIn, I used to spend just some time, but it wasn't consistent. So now I'm being a lot more consistent with LinkedIn. So that's a big part of like my marketing strategy, let's say. We're doing some SEO work. I'm not doing any paid ads at the minute because some of the website content and the pages need fixing before I do that. So we're just trying organic for the time being. And then in a month or 2, we're going to go with a Google Ads strategy. But yeah, it's mainly LinkedIn and SEO for the time being. A lot of our clients that we've got on currently are word of mouth referrals. Cool. So yeah, that's great because we've got a really good reputation. And then, we obviously get incoming inquiries as well. But that's mainly from website generating inquiries.
Love it. So you've got lots of different channels. You're clearly working lots on trying to build that in. But I always find it's important to understand that a lot of growth comes from referrals as well, which obviously is important because it means that you have a good foundational basis for business coming in. But adding those different channels and client acquisition channels is also equally as important, because referrals aren't something that you can track or measure, right? It comes in as and when. And so having those different channels, like you said, you're doing SEO, you're doing organic, but you're also going to be looking at paid ads and doing Google ads, which is obviously a bottom of the funnel activity. So people are actively searching your stuff.
Yeah.
Which is always important, because you can then scrape up any other opportunities that you aren't otherwise getting through the referrals. Because the market's big. It's just about going out and finding the opportunity.
You know, the thing about cleaning is you don't have to go and look out for it. It's not like e-commerce where you've got to convince people that they need your product. Like, if people want cleaning, they'll go out and go and find a cleaner. It's as simple as that. But you've got to be visible, and you've got to market yourself in a way where they think you're the right fit for them. And you're the company to take away all the problems that they've got with the current situation that they're in. So yeah, it's one of those things, like, if you need it, you're going to go and look for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I absolutely love that. Okay, fantastic. So in terms of then, you've been now in business for 4 years. What are the biggest lessons you could maybe share with our viewers and listeners out there from your journey?
Always focus on growth
Mm.
and improving your skills. I think that's something like hasn't got any value. You know, it's invaluable. Your skills, your education, listen to podcasts, you know, don't watch Netflix. Don't watch films. Just listen to a podcast that you'll benefit from. Then you'll learn from people that you aspire to be like. Motivate yourself. Wake up on time. Always focus on sales. So prioritize that before everything else. Because without sales, there's no business. With no business, you've got nothing. You know, with no leads, there's no sales. So it really, really is important. Like, when I do my schedule, I will make sure that inquiries are looked at first before I do an SOP, for example, because they're hot inquiries. They need cleaning. So I need to speak to them as soon as possible, and don't wait to answer an email like a week later. Answer the email within 24, 48 hours. And that's one of the promises that we say to our clients as well. We'll make sure that you responded to by 48 hours, within 48 hours. So people are not waiting around for us to respond. I think, it's just concentrate. And there's a lot. There's a lot. Concentrate, focus on growth, and focus on educating yourself, and find someone that will inspire you, that you can look up to.
I love it. I love it. And all of them, I couldn't agree more with. I think focusing on growth, I think it's one of the most fundamental. Obviously, it depends on where you are in the life cycle of the business.
I mean, if you don't want to focus on growth, don't focus on growth. It could be that you just want to do 100K every year and you're happy with that. Yes, just focus on client retention then.
Yeah, exactly. But on the focus on growth element, I always say that if you're not growing, you're dying, right? And you always really need to be looking at, otherwise you'll have companies, and there are organizations out there that have been around for 30 years or whatever, and they're just plodding along. They're not really, they're happy with what they've got. That's absolutely fine. But in this new world that we're entering in, there's going to be more competition than ever. There's going to be more opportunities than ever for other businesses. And so if you are not growing or continuously looking to grow, you will be left behind. There is no doubt about it. And so that's such a good piece of advice. But I feel like, especially in the UK, it's not always the advice that's always taken. People are quite comfortable within the organization, but growth is integral to running a business. You need to be looking out for it. I love it. Maggie, it's been a fantastic conversation today. Thank you for sharing your time. I like to end every single podcast with the same question. And that is, if you had a magic wand you could wave to solve one business problem, what would that be?
God, things take too long for me. Like, everything just takes too long. I just want it to be done yesterday. If I could increase the speed of everything and everyone around me by 10 times, that's what I would do. That's the
first time we've got that response, but I absolutely love that. It's you never get time back. So if you can...
Oh my God, it's like things like always take too long. They cost too much. And I just want them to be done quicker. It's just one of those things. I'm very impatient.
Impatience leads to... it could be a good and bad quality, but I always see it in business as a good quality, because you're constantly looking to grow or get to level up and get to the outcome that you're looking for, and that speeds up the growth journey, right? If you're impatient, an impatient entrepreneur versus a patient entrepreneur, an impatient entrepreneur will get the sweat the little stuff and get the things done now. A patient entrepreneur will say, oh, I'll get to it. This is something else is more important. Something else. Before you know it, everything is more important and nothing gets done.
And yeah, I mean, what I say to my employees, just imagine tomorrow doesn't exist, because tomorrow brings another 10 problems. The same problems that you had today, but 10 more of them.
So true. The amount of times, especially in my own journey, where I found where I've been like, it happens where you go, okay, I could finish this now, but I'll push it to the next day. And then the next day happens. And then fires need to be put out. Things need to be sorted. And then you're like, oh, I should have done that yesterday, because if I finish that, and then before you know it, it's a snowball effect. Things get more difficult and you're running up a hill and falling down it at the same time. Maggie, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for sharing your time today and sharing your insights. For all those out there that might want to reach out to you, where would they go? How would they find you?
So LinkedIn, if you can spell my name. Or just look for Housekeeping Club on LinkedIn and you can see me there. I think that's the main platform.
We'll put it all in.
And then, yeah, obviously we've got our website and, I can share my email as well. But yeah, Housekeeping Club based in Kendal.
Fantastic. Maggie,
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.